Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Alexa, hit my music.
Your liked songs from Spotify.
Late nights, red eyes, seeing the cops out, flashing lights from the
Welcome back. I'm Wayne Tuttle. I'll be your host this week. This is Chasing Legends. Before we get much further, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, go to the About section. In the description, you'll see the link for our shirts. Dutch on a Rendezvous, Legend of the Superstition Mountains, gray and black, short sleeve, long sleeve. We don't make a dime off of it. Pick one up if you like. Styling and profiling. So that'll be done. Pick up your copy of Lust for Gold on DVD and Blu-ray, and you can download that sucker if you want. Watch it on your phone or your tablet or whatever, and everything going well on that. There's a sweepstakes. Go to their website, sign up. I think it's a sweepstakes for 4 days, 3 nights in the Superstition for 2 people. Travel expenses, everything paid for. No purchase necessary. So pretty cool deal. So if you want to kind of get out in the Superstition Mountains, never been there, that's something to go over and sign up for. Maybe you get your chance to go into the mountains with an REI. That being done, let's take ourselves back a ways. I've been thinking about this story for quite some time, and I can't figure out what year it was. 1990, 2000. I know it was a ways back, 20, 30 years back. I'm not sure how I got in touch with the guy either. And we're going to call him Gary, because I'm not going to use his name because I haven't been in touch with him for many years. Was a really nice guy. And all I remember is I got in touch with him somehow, and we kind of talked. And I keep thinking it had to do maybe with the Lost Dutchman forum, and through a message through there. Could have been in one of the early rendezvous we actually talked, but I don't think so. It's just I don't have a very clear memory of how this got started. But he told me about this spot he found in the mountains. And he said there was this area, and there were these rocks, and they were kind of a circle. And they were spaced out. There's at least a dozen of these boulders, large-sized boulders, and they'd been placed there. And in the center, there were 2 large rocks. It was like 7-8 foot rocks that had been standing and had fallen down or been pushed down. And he believed there had been a lintel on them, which like Stonehenge, which is that top rock that goes across the top. And you walk through there, and he believed it was kind of like you go between the stones and something. And it sounded a very cool place, and he talked a little about it going up there. There was an old trail, and there was some monuments that were like 2-3 feet tall, rocks stacked with more of a pointed like rock on the top of each one. And he said it was kind of a really kind of cool story. And it was a place he wanted to go out to. And he wanted someone to go out and kind of take a look at it. And he wanted to find this lintel rock and measure this stuff out more. And he said it was all, you could tell it was purposely done and all this. So I remember we hooked up, and I met him out there. We got started crack of dawn before the sun came up. And it had to be before Randy, because Randy would have went along to check this out too. And what's in the back of my mind, as I know there's the stories with different things, but there's always the Deering story of between the 2 stones and things like that. So you're thinking some of what he's saying sounds like Lost Dutch clues. And I'm thinking, well, you always got to have a bit of an open mind when someone's talking about something, thinking, the clues passed down, they could mean something different than what we've always thought they meant. So I thought, okay, he could be onto something. This is, at least it'd be an interesting place. I was pretty interested in seeing it. And on the way in, he talked a bit about it here and there. He did not feel it was any way a medicine wheel, anything like that. It was quite a large, but it wasn't like a stone circle. It was like boulders and stuff at certain given points. And he didn't think it was anything like circle stone, because it wasn't like a wall or anything like that. He didn't think there was a sighting stone, but he wanted to go out and between two of us walk it and kind of look at it and measure the distances between the stones and all this stuff. So it's very cool. We figured it would take us 3 or 4 hours to get into it. And it took us about that, probably. We moved along pretty good. He was, a lot of times when people are very meticulous and they're kind of into certain things, they're kind of a bit more of a greenhorn in the mountains. He actually could move good in the mountains. So that was one of the first things I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, because he obviously has been back in the mountains, and where we were going was definitely off trail. We went out there, and I'm not going to talk about the area too much, because it was his area, and it was one of those situations where you tell someone, I'll never, I told him I'd never really kind of say nothing. If I did speak to him, or if he gets back a hold of me and says it's cool to talk about it, I would maybe revisit this. But so we went up, and we start working our way up this mountain area. And he starts pointing out these signs and monuments and stuff, and I'm not feeling like they're monuments. Not kind of feeling it very much, but I kind of see there is a path. Kind of. It's not something you're seeing physically in the ground, and if it's something 150, 200 years old, it could be well grown over. It felt like more like it was a game trail here and there we were hitting. And we work our way up, and we get to the spot. And it's kind of an open area. I was expecting a more open area than it was. It wasn't all the way up. It wasn't like on a plateau mesa type thing. It was kind of elevated, maybe 2/3 of the way up, 3/4 of the way up in this mountain area. And it was kind of off there. And it was, I don't know, maybe 40 by 40 feet, which is a good sized area. And I looked around, and I got there, and he said, okay, we're here. And I was kind of looking around, and there were some random boulders around, and I kind of looked at them, and they didn't really, they kind of formed a circle, and I kind of looked at them all, and I was like, this isn't kind of what I had in my head, kind of what he'd been talking about. And then there were the two stones kind of in the center. They were a little off center, and I would give him that, but and he'd talked like they're 7-8 feet. There'd been a lintel on them, and this was something to walk through. And he started talking then. He said what he believed the way these stones were arranged was a circle, and they would form a pentagram and all this other stuff. And he had a tape, and not like just a like a 20-40 foot tape. He had contractors long tape for about 100 feet. So we were measuring from the top to the bottom, north to south, and different things. And then we were taking the compass, and he was kind of orientating the degrees each one was, and we were writing it down. And he'd pulled out this binder, and he opened it up and starts writing notes down on these measurements. And I kind of look over and think, okay, that's kind of cool. At least, And again, I appreciate this because he's being very meticulous on it. And he's write a number, we'd measure something else, catch the degrees, and this and that. And the degree each line would lay. And I'm looking, and he starts talking about this and says what he felt was there was a pentagram kind of symbol, and it was in this circular pattern. And I don't know if he was going Masonic or what he was going with it at the time, but he was talking about the orientation and certain different things. And then he said these two center posts were up, and there was a lintel on it, and they were in the ground, and that was a doorway, and he believed it was a portal. And what he wanted to find was the lintel piece. After we'd done all the measuring, we spent we'd probably spent 40-45 minutes getting his measurements. Then we spent another 40-45 minutes wandering around, looking for this lintel. If it got thrown over the side, and we went all over the place, couldn't find it. But at that point, I'm realizing his standing stones are about maybe 3.5-4 feet long. They're not really necessarily oblong. They were kind of oblong. And I was thinking this lintel piece, I don't know how far apart they were, but you would have to be very small to go through his portal. You could be 2.5-3 feet tall, because they would have to be buried in the ground, I would think. And he kept walking through between those, and when he would do it, he'd say, the hair on my arms, stands on end. And of course, that moment is when I usually kind of start looking around thinking, okay, this is about to get weird. So we looked around. He was pretty frustrated. He couldn't find the lintel piece. He thought they might have carried it off. I said, yeah, that's probably it. They carried off this probably 200-pound boulder. And I wasn't finding any markings on any of the boulders. And like I said, they weren't, if you went east to west or north to south, they weren't the same distances. There was nothing real relevant. There wasn't showing anything that some had been pulled out where he would say there was probably one here, but it's missing. And you would have seen some sort of indentation. You would have seen something, been able to kind of mark it. The boulders were all kind of, like I said, they kind of varied a lot. And then the other problem was they were all different types. There was no markings whatsoever. I really looked at them, used a little water on a couple where I thought I saw something briefly, because I really wanted for the guy to see something, you know, be able to vindicate a little of this. And then he sat down and we started to, I said, we got to get going because we're going to get out of here. We're going to be out of here. Probably the sun will be going down by the time we finally get out of the mountains. So let's kind of get it. So he kind of wrapped everything up, and I know he took some pictures. I thought he gave me a couple pictures of the spot, and he had drawn out on it. It was very nice, and I got it somewhere. I don't know where I would find it. I'll have to look through a couple of my folders on maps and stuff. But he drew part of it out and some of the measurements and wrote some of it on a piece of paper for me, figuring if you know, and I looked at it for a while, trying to see if there was anything relevant I found, but it was just randomness. So we're walking out, and we got to the point, we were making good time out. So we finally, you know, we get out, and I remember we got back to the vehicles, and there was cloud cover that day, so it was nice. Realized we made good time out, talking to him. I'm saying, I don't know, I'm not really feeling it. I said, I think what you're seeing is you're kind of putting something into it. And he was being very nice about it. And he brought out the binder and started pouring. And it was the stone maps. And he had the stone maps, the Bilberry crosses, and he had all this stuff laid out in it. And I'm looking at it, and you know, it was losing me faster and faster as that goes. At the time, I didn't know what I know now about the stone maps, and I wasn't a believer then. So I was, at that time, I just didn't really, I had enough knowledge, just kind of, I went on a feeling with them. And then obviously later I learned, you know, much more about the history. And, you know, I mean, at this point in time, as soon as someone starts talking about the stone maps, and if I say, you know, Travis Tomlinson made them, and they start going through, no, they were found in a, you know, under an altar in a church, or they start talking about how they were dug up along the road out going out to Superior, I'm kind of done with the story, because we just know that's not true anymore. No, all that is just not true. So whether you want to believe it's based on something else or something else, we can continue a conversation. But the moment you kind of get into that origination story that Travis Marlowe wrote in that book about how Tomlinson supposedly found him. If you're buying into that, you haven't done much research at all. You haven't put much time into talking to anybody about it. But at that time, I was kind of indifferent to all that, so I was kind of like, kind of going through his stuff and trying to make sense of it. And he had the, you know, the crosses kind of set in there, and this, and the heart, and then that, and then he starts involving the Latin heart, and I'm like, okay. And none of it really seemed to make sense. But it's kind of funny because we get years later, and there's a number of different people, and you know, I mean, highly educated people can take and figure things out that are random. And that's where I learned that from, right from the start, is this guy had this stuff down. He had all these numbers. I didn't understand them. I had the paper. I listened to what he said. I couldn't really apply any of it. I didn't understand where he was going with it. And I think years later, I took a satellite photo of the site and looked at it and just tried to kind of look at it from a natural standpoint to see what I would kind of see. And it was even worse than when I'd been out there originally. Nice guy, though, and we had a great trip. It was a great trip. It was a lesson learned, an area I probably have no interest of ever going back to. I don't think there was anything there. Why he took the Bilberry crosses, the Latin heart, the stone maps, and everything else he did, and did the whole pentagram, and he believed it was all about a portal and connectivity. Whatever it was Gary had in mind, it was a portal type thing. And I've been to these places before, and they're piles of rocks, or they're this or that, or some natural thing, and I've never witnessed anything of anything of consequence, or got kind of like, ooh, So, but he believed, he wasn't sure through time and space how this was supposed to work, but he was, really explained it well for at the time period at the time. And I didn't know a lot about physics and understand a lot of this stuff. I've kind of pulled myself together more on that, but I didn't quite was able to kind of understand it then, and even now I would, looking back at it, as like, it seemed for the randomness of, he thought he saw something, which happens to a lot of people. They think they see something, and then it goes beyond that, and they keep thinking something's there. And as he did the measurements, I was thinking, man, these measurements are not even close at times, and none of this work. But he never seemed to kind of drop off a bit. It kind of like, and then, so I think sometimes guys with numbers try to work things to how they want it to work. He was a nice guy. It was a wonderful trip. I don't have a problem with the trip. It was an area of the mountains I'd been in, but not a particular place I'd been to. I didn't see anything relevant there, anything that. If I ever find that paper where he drew that stuff out and those numbers, I'll post it or put it somewhere or something, and maybe it'll be one of these times we'll do a Chasing Legends revisiting loose ends or something, which would be an interesting one. But I've at that point and up to then and ever since then, I've never found anything quite relevant with a lot of that stuff. And we've went out and done our own thing, kind of looking at those types of spots, and people will see that sometime in the episodes, when now that we're through COVID and we can kind of start moving forward on a lot of this stuff, and especially the last year and a half, the 1,001 things that have happened in between, the extension of that is going to be very, very cool. But for right now in Chasing Legends, as far as Gary's time portal or whatever, not much there. But that happens to people, and it doesn't mean they're crazy, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily wrong in what they believe. They matrix and put those things together, and you want to be somewhat respectful. You always want to kind of keep in a bit of an open mind as you're looking at it as it unravels, and then you always want to be still, again, as long as you can, somewhat respectful to someone, till they just keep pushing and poking at you. And he was very nice. He revisited it, talked to me a bit about it, and I remember he disappeared. It was after a year or two later. I hadn't heard from him again. I'm sure he's still out there. He was a younger guy. I think he was a little bit younger than me. I respected the scientific approach that he went with it, even though it wasn't very scientific on paper. So there you go. The portal, the superstition portal that wasn't. I guess that would be kind of what you would call it. Thanks for joining us. I know we're kind of running through some mysterious Superstition Mountains stuff that aren't so mysterious, but that's just the way it is sometimes. Again, hit subscribe, hit the notification bells. Until the next time we catch you, I'm Wayne Tuttle. This is Chasing Legends. Take care.